The US has attacked a vessel traveling from Venezuela carrying illegal drugs through the Caribbean, killing 11 people. In a post to Truth Social, US President Donald Trump released footage of the strike. It's the first known operation of its kind since the Trump administration's recent surge of warships in the region.
We just, over the last few minutes, literally shot out a boat, a drug-carrying boat, a lot of drugs in that boat. And you'll be seeing that, and you'll be reading about that, and you'll see. And there's more where that came from. We have a lot of drugs pouring into our country, coming in for a long time. And we just, these came out of Venezuela and coming out very heavily from Venezuela. A lot of things are coming out of Venezuela. So we took it out.
Right, let's bring in John Holman, who joins us live now from Mexico City. John, we saw the deployment of those warships days ago, but this seems to be the first time we've seen it take some form of action. Is there any reaction at all from Venezuela on this?
We haven't seen that so far today, but there was actually reaction already yesterday before even this strike took place, which basically President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela said that he thought that Secretary of State from the US, Marco Rubio, was inciting President Trump and said that he would have blood on his hands. And he was warning that if US forces actually tried to invade Venezuela, then there'd be an armed reaction. He's already started enlisting people for a militia. But I think one important point actually from President Trump's statement on Truth Social, that social media outlet, is saying that this happened in international waters. And that was quite a big question over this, because if it happened in Venezuelan waters, that would have been a more direct challenge to Venezuelan sovereignty. The area that this did happen in the South Caribbean is where a lot of go-faster boats do go through carrying drugs. So this is something, and I think immediately we picked up on it, but it would have been more of an escalation still if it happened in Venezuelan waters.
Right, and you mentioned Marco Rubio there. Well, he's arriving in Mexico in the coming hour. What are we expecting from that visit?
Yeah, just as there's tension between the Trump administration and Venezuela, quite a lot of it, there's a $15 million bounty for President Nicolas Maduro that the US has put on his head. There's tension, a lot less so, but still there with Mexico. That's partly because the United States, President Trump signed a directive with the Pentagon saying, the US Department of Defense, saying that the US military could act against drug organizations, and some of those were in Mexico, and that's then pushed on to something that he's talked about before, actually, saying that he'd offered to send the US military to Mexico to fight drug trafficking organizations. That's something that this president, Claudia Sheinbaum, has really rejected. She's saying this country's already doing enough to stop them. So that will undoubtedly be something that the Secretary of State from the US discusses when he arrives in Mexico.
OK, thank you very much for the update. John Holman there. Let's go live to Vanessa Newman, a former Venezuelan-American diplomat, and she's the founder of Asymmetrica, a geopolitical risk research and defense technology advisory firm. Thanks very much for joining us now from Montana. So we still don't have the full details on who was on board or if anyone was killed or injured, but could this provoke a reaction, do you think, from Venezuela at all?
Thank you for having me on this evening. I think it's, as I said last week to Daniel Chirinos of NTN24, this is pretty much as we expected, that it is a play. And if you follow the listing, it was, Venezuela poses a threat to national security. It is a state-sponsored, very transnational organized crime and terrorist group, and the deportation of Venezuelans and the designation of Tren de Aragua and of Cartel de los Soles, and tying it back to Maduro, has been a very systematic, prolonged along the timeline strategy that has led up to this moment. I'm sure will lead, to reaction from Maduro. He was already reacting yesterday. He's been posting videos of Venezuelans, in defense of their territory. But I don't think this isn't going to be an incursion. This is not going to be played out the way Maduro has been marketing it. It's going to be exactly the way it has played out today. which is a drug interdiction becomes a heated war event, a battle, and then then it escalates. And then if it continues to escalate, it could become an exfil operation. If you look at the material off the coast of Venezuela, it's more suited to an exfil and very aggressive drug interdiction than an incursion.
I'm just very sorry, apologies for that. I'm conscious of time, so I just had to interrupt there. Why are, in your opinion, US warships stationed there in the first place? I mean, on the one hand, Trump says it's to stop narco drug trafficking. On the other hand, Venezuela is accusing it of attempting for regime change.
Well, the sort of, Venezuela's go-to line, the Chavista go-to line is that whenever something happens to them that they don't like, they try and accuse the United States as, these evil imperialists who are attempting regime change. The point of the matter is they are the largest drug trafficking organization in the world. There are decades of evidence from many, many countries to do this. They are torturers and, committing rights against humanity. They've forced a quarter of their people into exodus because of torture and famine and fear. So they're not really in a position to complain too much. Crying regime change is normal for them. What this is about is that the United States is finally taking seriously the fact that Venezuela poses a serious threat. And this is also an economic encircling, and to ensure that Russia and Iran do not come to Maduro's aid.
Right. Thank you very much, Vanessa Newman. Sorry, we'll have to end it there. Thank you always for your thoughts and speaking to Al Jazeera.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news, expert insight. Like, share, stay ahead.